Hello, I'm Dr. Bryce Kaye, speaking to you from my home port in Oriental, North Carolina. Today we're going to be talking about what really happens down below in your body, in your brain, when you get into a negative enmeshment fight, when both of you are competing with each other to see who can hurt the other the most. And perhaps you're one of these people who later regrets what has happened, who 1 hour later, 2 hours later says, why did I do that again? Why didn't I learn from last time? How can I be so dumb as to wound my relationship? That's not the way that I want to be. Why can't I just walk away? Or why can't I just refrain from going into a rage state? What's really happening when that occurs? So I'll be talking about what's happening in the mind and in the brain. First of all, you need to understand that we have a system that connects us through what's known as the mirror neuron system. It's the way that we model each other's mind in our own minds. We have a sophisticated system for doing that, and it helps us to feel compassion, helps us to feel empathy. And when we are influenced by the other person's mind, we can feel our colors are richer, the meaning in our life is greater, we're more important. And it's in large part why we get married, why we hook up with each other, is we want this cross-pollination between our minds through this mirror neuron system. Now, many of you don't know this, but we actually discovered this in the late 90s through the apes. There was a cage, a lab attendant who came walking in with a banana while some apes were hooked up with brain measuring devices. And when the apes saw the attendant eating the banana, there was a replication in their own brain of the banana eating parts of the brain were lighting up as if they were doing it. And we discovered that even apes have mirror neuron systems for modeling each other's experiences. So this is a wonderful system. It helps us to feel important, loved, enhances meaning, helps us live longer, by the way. But when we feel disapproval, when the face conveys this negativity and the tone of voice conveys all this disapproval, that mirror neuron system is like a huge copper wire, a huge copper cable that has no resistance, and all this electricity comes flowing into this of negativity, and it's like a huge shock to the nervous system. And when that occurs, we have a profound instinctive shame response. In its most acute form, there is a change in muscle tone. It's actually a parasympathetic shutdown of our dopamine circuits in the brain. We get this curling response, gaze goes down, muscle tone changes. There's a whole reflex system of shame. And it feels horrible. Our self-esteem drops like a rock, and we feel worthless. It distorts our thinking. We might start thinking that we're weak, that we're defective. It takes many forms. So that is what we want to avoid when we get into a fight. We're really fighting to keep our noses above water so we can breathe, so we don't, it's like we were trying to avoid a mini death. And so we will use, some of us will use a subjugation response, but many of us will use a rage response where we attack back, when that momentarily gives us a feeling of power, that we're strong, that we're important. Just in the moment, it keeps our nostrils above the water, and we feel like we can breathe. But, of course, it threatens our partner. They start going under. They respond with, he or she responds with a fight-flight response and attacks us. So it's how we get into these interlocking fights that we don't pull out of. What's happening in the brain when that occurs is a loss of flexibility. Now, I'd like to show you important part of the brain in this chart, in this illustration. There's an area called the upper anterior cingulate and the lower anterior cingulate. The upper anterior cingulate is in charge of metacognition, meaning ability to override automatic responses. It works with your prefrontal area in the brain, which is important for advanced thinking. And the two work together to give you an override of automatic responses. This is your cognitive flexibility. Okay, now the lower anterior cingulate encodes emotion. And when that lower anterior cingulate encodes distress, and particularly shame, it will shut off. It is reciprocally connected to the upper area, and it will tend to shut off upper brain. So as lower anterior cingulate heats up, upper brain shuts off, prefrontal area tends to shut down, and you can actually see changes in brain metabolism in these areas between lower consciousness and upper consciousness. Now, as your brain shuts down in your advanced thinking, you lose flexible thought in 3 dimensions. One dimension is you lose connection to your transcendent values. Usually those are truth and responsibility for welfare. And instead you become more egocentric. You are concerned more about pride, appearance, comfort, or pleasure. And so you lose transcendent values. The second dimension is you lose what I call heterocentricity. That's a very geeky term, but it means that you're concerned about not just one area, but multiple areas. You're concerned about self, you're concerned about other, you're concerned about how the relationship is running. So your brain is actually able to be caring of multiple people and things. And that's heterocentricity. When you lose that, you regress primarily to egocentricity. Now, if you're codependent, you only care about the other, but most of us, when we get into fights, we're caring only about ourselves. Egocentricity. It's only about us that matters now. The third dimension that you lose is future world. You lose the ability to model the future intuitively in your unconscious. You become concerned primarily only about the present. Future doesn't even exist when you get into a really bad fight. That's in large part why you can do things that cause a lot of damage. You're not concerned about the future because it doesn't exist in the modeling of your mind. Now, when these 3 dimensions, transcendent values, heterocentricity, future, modeling a future, when those 3 dimensions deteriorate, you wind up egocentric, concerned about the present following only an emotional mandate. I call that P-brain state. And that's very rigid, and all you're going to do is automatic defensive behavior. Now, there are some things you can do. Some of them are kind of complex, some of them are simple. I'll be talking to you about them in future videos. But I hope you have a better understanding from our talk today about what's going on during a fight. This is Dr. Bryce Kaye. Thank you for listening, and wish you fair winds and a safe voyage. Goodbye.